Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Radha Madhav, Radha Madhav Radhe. Jai Radha Madhav, Radha Madhav Radhe. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Gaura Pimanande. Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa. Pri Vrajagacharya Stotra Satta Sri Simad His Divine Grace. Charabai Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Sri Prabhupada ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki. Skandibiti Founder Charya's Divine Grace Sri Prabhupada ki. Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur ki. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki. Harinama Sankirtan ki. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Dainitai Gaura Pimanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, to Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. How the devotees are coming?
By car.
They have their car.
Rental car.
They have their car, whatever. Yeah. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savrutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanditam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kancana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us first offer respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayashabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering a service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Idam Bhagavatam Nama
Puranam Brahmasamitam
Puranam Brahma Samhitam
Uttama-sloka Charitam
Uttama-sloka Charitam
Chakara Bhagavan Rishi
Chakaram Bhagavan Rishi
Nishreyasaya lokasya
Nishreyasaya Lokasya
Dhanyam Swasyayanam Mahat.
Dhanyam Swastayanam Maham.
This Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Granthara, the king of all Vedic literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God, the Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Krishna Chaitanya
Sri Krishna Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda
Prabhu Nityananda
Sri Advaita
Sri
Gadadhara
Advaita Gadadhara
Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Krishna Hare Krishna
Krishna Krishna Hare
Krishna
Hare
Krishna Hare Hare
Hare Rama Hare
Hare
Rama
Rama Hare Rama
Rama Rama Hare
Rama
Hare
Rama Hare Hare.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Sarabhyaya Namaha
Om Sarabhyaya Namaha.
Om Sarabhyaya Namaha
Om Sarabhyaya Namaha.
Om Sarabhyaya Namaha
Om Sarabhyaya Namaha.
Mukham karoti vasaram pangom langayate girim Yatkripatamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam Yatkripatamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Bhagavatam class. We are continuing from canto number 1, chapter number 3, entitled Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And today's text is, what number? 31, huh? So, Canto 1, Chapter 3, Text 31. Yatha
Yata
Nabhasi
Namasi
Negao Gohu Renur
Venu
Va
Va
Partivo
Partivo
Anile
Anile
Evam
Evam
Drastari
Drashtari
Drishyatvam
Drishyatvam
Aropitam
Aropitam
Abuddhibihi
Abuddhivihi
Yatha Nabhasi Meghaugho
Yata Nabhasi Meghago
Renurava Partivo Nile
Renurva Partivo Nile
Evam Drastari Drishyatvam
Evam Drashtari Drishyatvam
Aropitam Abuddhibihi
Aropitam Abuddhivihi
Yatha Nabhasi Meghaugho
Yatha Nabhasi Meghago
Renurava Partivo Nile
Renurva Partivo Nile
Evam Drastari Drishyatvam
Evam Drashtari Drishyatvam
Aropitam Abuddhibihi.
Aropitam Abuddhivihi.
Yeah, I think we did this one yesterday, no? Huh? Huh? 32. Yeah, it sounded familiar. So we're doing 232. Mm. Okay. Ataha param
परं
yad
यत्
avyaktam
अव्यक्तं
avyudha
अयूढ
guna
गुण
brimhitam
बृंहितं
adristashruta
दृष्टाश्रुत
vastutvat
वस्तुत्वात्
sa
स
jivo
जीवो
yat
यत्
punar bhavaha.
पुनर्भवः
Atha param yad avyaktam
अतः परं यद् अव्यक्तम्
avyudha guna brimhitam
अव्यूढगुणबृंहितम्
adristashruta vastutvat
अदृष्टाश्रुतवस्तुत्वात्
sajivo yat punar bhavaha.
सजीवो यत् पुनर्भवः
Atha param yad avyaktam
अतः परं यद् अव्यक्तम्
avyudha guna brimhitam
अव्यूढगुणबृंहितम्
adristat shruta vastutvat
अदृष्टाश्रुतवस्तुत्वात्
sajivo yat punar bhavaha.
सजीवो यत् पुनर्भवः
Atha param yada vyaktam
अतः परं यदव्यक्तम्
avyudha guna brimhitam
अव्यूढगुणबृंहितम्
adristat shruta adrista shruta vastutvat
अदृष्टाश्रुतवस्तुत्वात्
sajivo yat punar bhavaha.
सजीवो यत् पुनर्भवः अतः परं यदव्यक्तम् अव्यूढगुणबृंहितम् अदृष्टाश्रुतवस्तुत्वात् सजीवो यत् पुनर्भवः
sajivo yat punar bhavaha. Atha param yadat vyaktam avyudha guna brimhitam adrista shruta vastutvat sajivo yat punar bhavaha. Atha param yada vyaktam avyudha guna brimhitam adrista shruta vastutvat sajivo yat punar bhavaha. Ataha this param beyond yat which avyaktam unmanifested avyudha without formal shape
without formal shape
guna brimhitam affected by the qualities
affected by the qualities
adrista
adrishta
unseen
unseen
ashruta
ashruta
unheard
unheard
vastutvat
vastutvat
being like that
being like that
saha
saha
that
that
jivaha
jivaha
living being
living being
yat
yat
that which
that which
punah bhavaha
punaha
bhavaha
bhavaha
takes birth repeatedly.
take birth repeatedly.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
Beyond this gross conception of form is another subtle conception of form which is without formal shape and is unseen, unheard, and unmanifest. The living being has his form beyond this subtlety. Otherwise, he could not have repeated births. Kindly repeat after me. Beyond this gross conception of form
Beyond this gross conception of form
is another subtle conception of form
is another subtle conception of form
which is without formal shape
which is without formal shape
and is unseen,
and is unseen,
unheard,
unheard,
and unmanifest.
and unmanifest.
The living being
The living being
has his form
has his form
beyond this subtlety.
beyond this subtlety.
Otherwise, he could not
Otherwise, he could not
have repeated births.
have repeated births.
Purport. As the gross cosmic manifestation is conceived as a gigantic body of the Lord, so also there is the conception of his subtle form, which is simply realized without being seen, heard, or manifested. But in fact, all these gross or subtle conceptions of the body are in relation with the living beings. The living being has his spiritual form beyond this gross material or subtle psychic existence. The gross body and psychic functions cease to act as soon as the living being leaves the visible gross body. In fact, we say that the living being has gone away because he is unseen and unheard. Even when the gross body is not acting, when the living being is in sound sleep, we know that he is within the body by his breathing. So the living being's passing away from the body does not mean that there is no existence of the living soul. It is there, otherwise, how can he repeat his births again and again? The conclusion is that the Lord is eternally existent in his transcendental form, which is neither gross nor subtle like that of the living being. His body is never to be compared to the gross and subtle bodies of the living being. All such conceptions of God's body are imaginary. The living being has his eternal spiritual form, which is conditioned only by his material contamination. Translation again, beyond this gross conception of form is another subtle conception of form which is without shape and is unseen, unheard, and unmanifest. The living being has his form beyond this subtlety, otherwise he could not have repeated births. So this is a subject matter of um, relating to tattva, actually. What is the actual nature and reality of the living entity? Within the material world, the living entity, due to contact with matter, due to being contaminated actually by material energy, assumes both a gross body and a subtle body. Actually, most people they confuse the subtle body with the spiritual body. Uh, that is, of course, nicely explained in the Bhagavad Gita. The 5 gross elements of this material energy, as well as the 3 subtle elements of the mind, intelligence, soul. Air, water, fire, air, ether are the gross elements. Even the gross elements, we cannot see all the gross elements. Water is the grossest, is the more manifest of the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, we can see. Air, we cannot see. Ether, we cannot see. And then beyond these gross elements, are the 3 subtle but material elements called mind, intelligence, and ego. So here this is explaining how both the jiva, living entity, both the atma, the small atma, and the supreme atma, the paramatma, Krishna, are actually beyond these gross and subtle material coverings. But that what is unknown, of course, to most, even unknown to ourselves as devotees, at least initially, that this subtle, or rather the spiritual self, the spiritual identity of both the jiva and the Lord, both have spiritual form, isn't it? And of course, when Krishna appears in the material world, he appears in his original transcendental form of Satchit Ananda Vigraha. Yeah. So that cannot so easily be understood. Therefore, Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, Avajanantimam buddha manushim tanumasritam param bhavo jananto. My supreme nature is actually unknown to the vast majority of people. It's like Prabhupada explains how when Krishna appeared 5,000 years ago, so many people saw him, but very few could actually understand that he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this point is being made here that as long as the jiva, the small jiva, as long as we are covered or contaminated by the material energy, either gross or subtle, then we cannot realize, we cannot understand clearly our spiritual nature, our spiritual identity. Actually, the subject matter the subject matter of what we call tattva. Tattva means what is the definition of tattva? Sanskrit, our Sanskrit scholar here. What is meaning of tattva? Careful.
Truth.
Tattva, what is the absolute truth? Yeah. Tattva means reality, truth. We as devotees, our Vaishnava, that's why it's important to introduce the concept of Vaishnava, because Vaishnavism, Vaishnava acharyas especially, have specialized. Our Vaishnavas actually, that is a unique, special, we could say unparalleled feature of our Vaishnavacharyas, and we belong to this line of Vaishnavacharyas. They specialize in tattva. That, beginning with Srila Jiva Goswami, who has written his Sat Sandarbha explaining about tattva. And all of our acharyas, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote his Dasamula Tattva. So tattva, if we don't understand tattva, then we are doomed to remain in the material world, to suffer. So by knowing about dharma and tattva are intimately connected. We must know about dharma. A human form of life actually is meant to understand and to follow and to put into practice the principles of dharma. And these principles of dharma are not just some religious, sentimental, understanding. The principles of dharma are actually eternal principles that can be seen, that can be understood, that can be experienced everywhere in the world. Welcome to Mangalarti. Yeah. So, Prabhupada explains how one of the qualities of a Vaishnava, how many qualities Vaishnava? 26 qualities. One of the qualities is daksha. Daksha means expert. You have to whisper to him. Daksha means expert. Expert. Devotee means one who is expert at doing so many things. Especially devotees need to become expert in giving this knowledge of dharma, this knowledge of tattva. Because until and unless people know and understand about dharma and tattva, they will be confused. They will be acting on the bodily platform. They will be what we call in rivalry. They will be opposing one another. They will be clashing, like we see everywhere. Clashing is happening in a major way today, in our 21st century. So, Vedic culture is that knowledge that helps us identify and understand our original nature. Not only our original nature, actually to understand our original nature, which is spiritual nature, we also need to understand our present condition, material nature. We need to understand about the gross body and the subtle body. and that means we need to differentiate between the subtle body and then the spiritual body. Like this, Atma. Atma means, what does Atma mean? It means, it can mean the body, it can mean the mind, or the soul. Yeah. So we must know the difference between uh, the gross body, the subtle, the gross material body, the subtle material body, and the subtle spiritual body. Most people are totally unaware that they have, how many bodies we have? We how many bodies in our present body? One, one, two. Anyone for three? uh, four. Oh my God! And if you are haunted, you probably have more. And nowadays, most people are actually haunted without even knowing. But assuming that you're not haunted, haunted means other living entities living in you. Because of weak mind, other living entities can take control or can influence in different ways. Today that is happening a lot. Yeah. But otherwise, without being possessed or influenced by other living entities, if someone is Krishna conscious, he will not be, if he's actually Krishna conscious, he will not be falling under the influence of other living entities. But if one is not Krishna conscious, there is all good possibility he will be influenced, sometimes by many. I mean, sometimes many, like 100. Yeah. So we have four bodies inside. We're not alone. The body we see is, right now, we see the gross body. This is the more obvious material body, material gross body. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Apo nalo, that is verse. Yeah, Panchabhuta. Panchabhuta, five material elements. Apa, Anala, Akash, yes, ether. So in the Bhagavad Gita, uh, yeah, these things are all detailed. So this is the first body we have. The second body is also material, the subtle body of mind, intelligence, and ego. This is where our main problem is. Our main problem is within, we can't see. It's like invisible enemy. When you can see the enemy, more easy to deal with, but when the enemy is invisible, so our ahankara is like invisible, difficult. So that is our second body. Our third body, which is actually us, is the subtle body, the identity of the spirit soul. Seated within the heart of all living entity is the jiva. Sarvasachaham ridi sanivisto mata smitir jnanam apohanam cha vedaya sarvair aham eva vedyo vedanta krit vedavid eva saham. So Krishna explains that within the heart of all living entities, he is also sitting. The jiva is sitting, and then the the super soul is also sitting. So like this, the gross material body, the subtle material body, the spiritual jiva, the atma, and then the paramatma. This is very basic introductory knowledge that we find actually in the Bhagavad Gita. So that's why before teaching, we were discussing yesterday actually some devotees from Russia came. They're living here actually. Maybe you know one devotee, Raghava Pandit. Maybe you know him. Yeah, he was here yesterday with a few other devotees. And the very important principle to understand, we were discussing yesterday, that before teaching certain subject matters, before teaching some of the sciences, Vedic sciences, this preliminary basic knowledge must be understood. Yeah. And if it is not understood, then we should not be teaching that knowledge. That is why. Yeah, that is why in Vedic culture, the guru, the spiritual master, he is the sole responsible person to know and to decide what knowledge to teach to which student. And if he finds that the student is not qualified, he will not teach him. Modern day society, that is not a consideration. Yeah. Yeah, you can use as many of these yellow flowers as you want.
Thank you.
We have a backup.
Now I got your permission.
Yes, yes. In Nandip. So Sanatan has any question, or is just scratching his head?
How we can understand that the disciple has this quality that you described it before, that he understands the knowledge. Maybe he passed some exam, some classes.
Hare Krishna.
But how we can understand that students understand that basic knowledge?
How can we understand that the student has basic knowledge?
Yes.
That's
He read before something, but it doesn't matter. Like he understands it. Maybe he read, but doesn't understand.
yes. That can be understood by how well one applies that knowledge. Yeah, we have some Russian backup here. That is especially the Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. That is especially the duty, the responsibility of the spiritual master, who will at times test the student. Yes. That that's an important question, of course, because mm, it is actually explained how before a teacher and student or guru and disciple establish relationship, there's a time period for the student to understand the teacher and for the teacher to understand the student. Yeah. So in other words, um, how well one can carry out the orders of the teacher or the spiritual master is an indication of one's understanding. and and our acharyas explained that actually we're like half an hour delayed, kind of, yeah. Not really, but we planned it like that. Um, and it is explained by our acharyas that the most important duty and responsibility of a student or disciple is to understand, to properly understand, to realize the teachings given by the spiritual master. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jaina Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. That nice example is given in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Jiva Goswami. Who, due to his yeah, proper mood and mentality, his total surrender to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and his very high level of purification could understand what most people could not understand. Yeah. the same teachings or the same instructions can be given by the spiritual master, but they will be understood or accepted differently by students or disciples. There's within our society, the classic example we could say is the order that was given, which is known to everyone, by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that Pritibite Ache Joto Nagara Digram Sarvata Prashar Hoibi Moranam, that in every town and village the holy names will be introduced, will be chanted. But until Srila Prabhupada came along, nobody could understand what that meant. No one actually believed that it was possible to introduce Krishna consciousness in every town and village. But we see this morning we have people from different countries here. Yeah, that's Prabhupada's magic and miracle, to have actually, because he had that full faith and full surrender in his spiritual master, and because of his level of purity, actually, when Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, I read this some time back. Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, actually, after taking Vanaprastha, Prabhupada was thinking, what to do, what to do about the mission of my Guru Maharaj. Because after Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur disappeared, left, which is normally what happens, there's confusion, what to do, how to proceed. So Prabhupada was, you know, he was not one of the first one initiated by his Guru Maharaj. Rather, he was one of the later ones. Prabhupada waited like 13 years before taking initiation from his, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So it was like a junior. Prabhupada was a junior compared to so many of his godbrothers were already sannyasis. Prabhupada just only had a, a bachelor degree. Some of them had like masters and PhD. Many of the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta were highly educated scholars. They were scholars. Prabhupada was just, he had gone to university, but nothing seemingly nothing extraordinary. And so Prabhupada was waiting. You know, one of my god brothers is gonna take up the mission. So, anyways, I was reading some time back how a few devotees actually interviewed many people in Vrindavan, especially who were there when Prabhupada was in Vrindavan. And who got all kinds of nectar about Prabhupada meeting this one and Prabhupada speaking and telling this. So that was all put together in one book. I forget the title of the book. Like we're telling us, there's so many books of nectar are there. So Prabhupada was telling to one person that was recorded that after waiting for so many years and, being in Vrindavan, meditating, trying to understand and so he told to one person one day that um, none of my godbrothers are going to do this. He was waiting for them, for somebody to come forward and take up the mission of his Guru Maharaj. Then he said, basically, he came to the conclusion, nobody's going to do it. I have to do it. I have to do it. And of course, Prabhupada was always very humble. I have to do it means that he would explain, Prabhupada explained how his Guru Maharaj came in a dream. My Guru Maharaj forced me to take sannyas. And, more than once he came in his dream, forcing him to take sannyas. And taking sannyas means preaching, taking the mission of his Guru Maharaj. Yeah. We have 4 minutes before 7 o'clock. So the point being that for a disciple or for a student to actually be successful, he must hear nicely the uh, the main instruction, we could say, because guru teacher will give so many instructions. Sometimes so many instructions, the disciple will be confused. Which one is most important? So one needs to be able to capture the essence of what is being conveyed or given by the acharya, and make that, as Prabhupada would say, make that his life and soul, fully dedicated to that mission, because actually that is the mission of life. Mission of life is to be fully surrendered to Krishna's mission, which is being conveyed and given by in Guru Parampara. So naturally, part of that mission begins with understanding the section that you missed because you just came a few minutes ago. This verse today is basically explaining about the different levels of existence, beginning with this gross physical body, the subtle material body, and beyond that, the soul and the super soul, and how until and unless we have a very clear understanding of the spiritual dimension of the spiritual of the living entity, um, then we will, by the laws of nature, we will be forced to continue associating with both the gross and subtle bodies. Means we'll have to again take birth again and again in the material world. So I'll read the verse again for those who were not here when the verse was. And this is from the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, canto 3, chapter 3, rather. Canto 1, chapter 3, entitled Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And today's text was, 32. Beyond this gross conception of form is another subtle conception of form, which is without formal shape and is unseen, unheard, and unmanifest. That's speaking about the subtle material body. The living being has his form beyond this subtlety, isn't it? The jiva, living entity, is existing beyond this subtle. Yes. So the living being has his form beyond this subtlety, otherwise he could not have repeated births. And at the conclusion, the last paragraph I'll just read because it's very short. The conclusion is that the Lord is eternally existent in his transcendental form, which is neither gross nor subtle like that of the living being. Yeah. His body, Krishna's body, is never to be compared to the gross and subtle bodies of the living being. All such conceptions of God's body are imaginary, because there was reference to the Virat Rupa form of the Lord, which is temporary. The living being has his eternal spiritual form, which is conditioned only by his material contamination. Yeah. So as long as we are connected with these modes of material nature, then we cannot properly understand our or realize our eternal natural spiritual form. Huh. We're very close here. Any other? Actually, okay. We're just to let you know what's happening. In a few minutes, we're having darshan, followed by Guru Puja, and then because normally when we have jagya, it should be in front of the deities, so the curtains will be open, and we'll begin the jagya. And just before the jagya begins, we'll speak a little something. Yeah. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Sri Prabhupada ki, Jai Samasta Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Gaur Pimanande.
His Holiness Bhakti Raghav Swami Maharaj ki